Welcome to the Liberty Mindset. Come and explore some of the ideas and issues facing our liberty. 2022 is an election year. As libertarians, we ask that you consider voting in the Liberty Mindset. Welcome, and thank you for your time.
Hello, and good day to all who seek truth, liberty, and are piquing their own curiosity by joining us here on the fourth episode of Liberty Mindset. Gregor and I are here today with our gubernatorial candidate, Leon Noble, aka the man in the kilt. Leon, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that. I'm going to do a little isolation here. I am Leon Noble. I'm the elected primary elected gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party. That should not matter because I'm not running for the governor of the Libertarian Party. I'm running for the governor of Oregon. Mm-hmm. So, just to give you a nutshell, my intent is to take over the state and then leave everyone the hell alone. So, the goal here is to create balance. Balance is what Oregon needs. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's some people out there who think badly treated by the government, and they're tired of that. Mm-hmm. And I can say that just about everyone believes that at some point in time they've been badly treated by the government. So that's where I come in. I'm the one who's going to stop pretty much everything. I've kind of got this idea that if there's an emergency clause put into a bill, I'm not signing it ever. And I'm going to heavily think about it a lot. I probably won't sign it if it doesn't say at the last line, we refer this to the voters for their decision. Because I noticed this during a Republican debate I managed to get into at the end of April. And they told me that they were talking to homeless people, and then the homeless people want all of this stuff and they need to spend money to get the homeless people. And I'm sitting there going, where did you go to hear that? Because the ones that I'm talking to, and granted, the ones I'm talking to, you kind of got to carry one of these around to deal with. But the ones I'm talking to want to be left alone, and they don't want to be hassled, and they use programs, but that's not their goal. Their goal is to just exist,
to be free.
And so I figured this out. What happens is these candidates go to a shelter. The shelter produces that mom with 3 kids who's just trying to get back on her feet, and it's a
and you coached. Here we go.
Am I freezing?
You did
just
for a second.
For a moment. You said mom and froze.
Well, it says my internet connection is being unstable. I'm on Starlink, by the way. Starlink's been awesome, but when things get packed, things get packed. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's an inherently great system with minor breaks. So now that we know you're on Starlink, we'll just let you know if we miss something.
Okay. So let me get back to that. The candidates would go to the shelter. The shelter would produce, it was in the best interest of the shelter to produce the best photogenic, the best sob story, not the guy over in the corner who's a little sketchy and strung out and is just trying to survive one more day, with the one that's more likely to generate donations. And that's why everybody's disconnected. So in order to beat that, what needs to happen is that we need to refer things back to the voters. Yes, that's kind of not the point of a republic, but if we refer them to the voters, or we at least ask them in a poll, you can put a poll on Facebook and kind of get an idea of what people want to hear. But it's better to send it to the voters, because that way you can confirm who they are, and it's not just somebody brainwashing people, or well, not even brainwashing. It's not somebody just cheating the system and getting 300,000 people from New York to vote a certain way to swing the vote the other way. So what needs to happen is that the politics in Oregon need to find a way to actually discuss it with the entirety of the voters before they pass stuff. And that's
Yes.
why that needs to happen. But that's not what we're talking about today. Thank you for the opportunity to do the introduction, but
We're happy to have you, Leon, and definitely no, it's a passion. Definitely.
It was only an hour and a half. That debate yesterday was only an hour and a half. It took me 2.5 hours to get through it because I had to keep stopping and go do something else for a while.
Mm.
And I hope nobody thinks that I'm basing on Starlink, because I think it's a wonderful service, but they're 1.0 satellites. Occasionally they have short breaks.
Mhm.
And, it's not going to be until they get all 3,600 satellites and all of them up to version 2.0 when it will be really super great. So it is still in a kind of a beta thing. So,
well, and then I was an early adopter, so I have the V1 dish too. That doesn't help any either, because the technologies they're improving the technology daily. But yeah, it's just that.
Well, heading back in our episode here, we'll keep an eye out for any errors and glitches along the way. So our last episode, we did talk about the Third Amendment. We touched a little bit on Roe versus Wade, Breonna Taylor with no-knock raids. We touched a bit on the Fourth Amendment and how privacy exists in the world with the internet. But today we were hoping to kind of expand more on the Fourth Amendment in light of those discussions of privacy, and then especially with the recent ATF inspections or audits that have been cropping up in Delaware, Missouri, and probably some other states as well, and we just haven't been shown them yet. We do have a couple of video clips that are going to attempt to air here as well that we have pulled from YouTube.
Okay, one moment, please, since I'm the technical geek. And boom, boom, and boom.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I'm doing is verifying that you have it. You got 2 different purchases. Okay. If you have them, I'm out of here. That's how quick it is. Yeah. You have them with you by any chance? Are they? If you can unload them and bring them out, or you can go out to your foyer here, check them out, like serial number, and we're out of here. Yes. Yep. That's it. It'll take 5 seconds. The reason we're out here is we're obviously gun violence has been an uptick, so we want to make sure we've been having a lot of issues with straw purchases. One of the things indicators that we get is somebody makes a large gun purchase, and then a lot of times we've been there like, oh, those guns got taken. We're like, so the idea is when you purchase more than 2 guns at a time, it generates a multiple sale report. And it comes to us, and we have to check them out. That's all that is. He did nothing wrong. Did absolutely zero. I noticed that you were stopped in Philly, though, right, with one of your guns?
There's part 1, and here's part 2.
You feel more comfortable?
I'm okay. I didn't expect.
Oh no! Listen, it just came up. I'm telling you, that's why we came here. Look, there's an email from the federal side saying, "Can you make sure this guy's got his gun?" Now, if you recently just purchased a whole bunch of guns, if we can look at them and just scratch them off, and that way, because I know we don't do this again.
Yeah, we can just write which ones you just bought, and so we save a trip from coming back. We just confirm that you have them. Okay. I'll go get them.
Okay.
Okay.
We will wait out here.
Okay.
We will stay out here.
Okay.
You can lock yourself in there.
Little boy in there.
No. Listen, I understand. We'll stay out here. No big deal.
Okay.
Fine. All right. We'll stay out here.
All right.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack on those.
So cringe.
I mean, at first it's like, yes, he tells the homeowner, the resident, that all he has to do is be told that, yes, you bought them. And then all of a sudden he escalates it to, I need you to unload them and bring them forward. And then he escalates it to, I need to be able to see the numbers on it. So it goes from the, hey, just confirm that you got these so I can just go on my way, to now I want to know which guns you have, what they are, when they need to match up. I need to start tallying things. And
This
it
is
just
why-
seems a little odd.
This
What
is
do you
why
guys think?
building guns is superior to buying guns, because they don't know that you built 12 guns this year because they can't
There's no number.
identify them. There's no serial number. There's no background check. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy at least one gun to prove that you can do the background check. That's what I did. I bought a gun to make sure that people go, oh, he can pass the background check. I also got permission from the king to carry. And so I have that, but I also have a transportation workers identification credential. That's a 10-year background check by the FBI that's renewed every 5 years just to have that. And you can't get that if you can't buy a gun. So
Right.
that's all there is to it.
So much done already for gun purchasing. I can, it's like the government getting notification if you buy 2 or more. So if you and say your spouse decide to go upgrade your guns, you trade in guns, you each buy one, but it goes under one person, like say it goes under, your spouse instead of you for whatever reason for the sale itself. Does that mean that your spouse now bought 2 guns and is at risk of an audit?
It is. That's exactly what it is. They're going to do an audit, and what's happened, and this has been happening more recently, because they don't do this for everybody. What's happened is that the ATF and the FBI and all of these other 3-letter agencies have gotten to the point where they have been told that the narrative matters more than anything else. They need to be able to prove everything is wrong, and they need to treat everybody like a criminal. And that's where the problem is. So when you buy a gun, you have to do, I think, 4473, I think is the form. And the form literally stays with the dealer until the dealer closes, or 20 years, whichever happens first. At that point, it then goes to the ATF, but the ATF can go and inspect, and that they've started doing is taking pictures. And what they're doing with that is they're creating a registry. They're creating a database. This is what has happened. This guy, and it started out with, I just want to know if you still have these. And then he kept escalating. So the initial response that the humans should have is, do you have a warrant?
Yeah.
No. Get off of my property. You're trespassing, and I'm going to call for your removal. You have 10 seconds to comply. And then I would close the door, because it's none of their business. They have all the information they're supposed to have. If you buy 2 guns, let me put it this way. If you're just worried about self-defense in your home alone, you need 3 guns. Why? Because they jam, they need to get reloaded. Some guns are good for certain things. So I've said this for a long time. If I was going to just for home defense, now obviously I'm not set up for just home defense, but just for home defense, I was going to do a revolver by the bedside. The revolver gets me to the shotgun. Why? Because when I get woke up in the middle of the night, I can't see very good because I have to put my glasses on, and my eyes kind of do that whole, I got to blink it out. So 5 rounds out of shotgun would get there. 5 rounds out of a pistol would get there. So a revolver. I was looking at a Taurus Judge, and I was going to load it with 2 410 and the rest 45. So you get 2 not so lethal. We start with a bird shot, and then we go to buckshot, and after that it's slug. Because you're in my house, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to understand that you don't belong there. But I'm not going to play any games, and you're probably going to die if you don't turn around fast. And then the shotgun comes out, and that's where I go. I start with buck, slug. And then at that point, I should be to my AR platform. Now, why am I going to AR platform specifically? Because an AR platform is incredibly easy to use, and incredibly easy to set up, and incredibly easy to get trained on, because everybody has them. And they are actually, in a self-defense situation, I actually suggest an AR over a standard pistol. An AR pistol is better than a standard pistol, because it's the same thing. You can get them from 9mm 22 long rifle. I have them a 9mm 22 long rifle. You can get them in whatever caliber you want to. So the goal isn't the caliber. The goal is the other options that are associated with the capacity to
Welcome back to the workshop. It's fantastic.
Not have to train excessively.
Yeah.
That's the issue. So as far as personal defense goes, you're going to need 3 guns, and that means that the ATF is going to come. Well, now the ATF is going to come knock on your door because they get the little note saying you bought 3 guns,
Mhm.
and they're going to ask you, do you have it? And the first thing that I'm going to say is, do you have a warrant? Because it's none of your business unless you have a warrant.
Well, and
And
if
if you
they
if you
say
had
you
probable
have it,
cause,
then you
wouldn't
have
be
it.
having- Yeah. Well,
In theory, the paperwork should be right. If you passed all the background tests and you've gone through all the right things and the dealer is legit, then they have all the information that they could possibly want. They don't need to lay eyes on it.
yeah,
That's my
it's-
opinion.
and basically what
That's
they were
more
doing,
than enough info that they have.
what they were doing is they were saying, okay, this guy is buying guns and we think he's trafficking. That's what they were really doing.
Right.
So we don't have the full context of this situation. We don't know if he bought 12 guns in the last year
Mhm.
and suddenly he bought 2 at a time, and that
Mhm.
put up a red flag, because why is he buying so many guns? These guys all think that people only need 1 gun.
Mhm.
Self-defense people say you need 3, 4, 5. And the combat people say you need more than that.
Right.
So
What do you think, Gregor, on this?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to let Leon finish. It's not that I have a disagreement with what we're saying. I just have a different approach. Now, first off, let me be perfectly clear. I think the ATF is an agency that needs to be disbanded.
Mhm.
Done.
Gregor, on that?
I don't understand why
garbage.
the FBI needs to be reined in because they're not doing their job properly. Having said that, when somebody comes to your door, a peace officer, as much as those peace officers were literally trampling on his rights, and I acknowledge that. Confrontation when you're outnumbered 3-1 and probably are not armed standing at your door, that's a losing battle.
Yeah.
And promoting confrontation by just blatantly saying, get a warrant, go away, I would, it is not, though absolutely accurate, for me, it would be asking a series of questions to get them to voluntarily go away. And the reason is because you'll notice how he kept control of the officers kept control of the conversation, and that is how they're trained. If you can, by asking questions, remove their control, they're going to walk away, or you're going to have an opening to close the door quietly and just leave them standing there.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that.
Ever give never ever show whatever they're asking for, because as soon as you do any part of that, you've just consented to being searched. And they'll probably figure out a way to work that into getting into your house and searching inside your house without a warrant. And anything they find, since they quote had permission, is now can be used against you in a court of law. So first off, why are you here? We're here to verify you have the guns. Did I do anything illegal? No. If I show you anything and you find out it is illegal, can you use that against me in a court of law? Their answer will be yes, because it has to be. Well, then, you know what? I'm not comfortable doing that right now. If you want to set up an appointment where I bring the firearms to your office with a lawyer present, I will be happy to do that.
There you go.
So you're being cooperative. You're not being confrontational. And and they say, well, you don't have to do that. And I says, no, I don't have to do that. And I would be happy to show up with my lawyer and my firearms if you need to inspect them, but I'd like to know what law requires that. And next thing you know, they're losing control of the conversation. And if they say, well, you don't have to do that, I said, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Close the door and you're done.
Yeah.
And that it's a little less confrontational. Now, does that mean if they try to break their way in, I don't feel like confronting? No, I'm not particularly a peacemonger. But on the other side of the coin, if I can avoid any kind of confrontation, I'm much better off. And just asking questions avoids the confrontation.
One of the things a long time ago, I was private security, and the rules are a little bit different. But if you want to survive in private security, you get law enforcement training, and they call this verbal judo. So what they do is they go back and forth with you, and they use what you say to produce probable cause. That's what they're really doing. And as you can see, those guys showed up. They didn't show up with polos and badges. They showed up with body armor.
Yeah,
They're
Kevlar and strapped.
they're strapped. I'm willing, and they were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. There was one guy at the door, the next guy was 5 to 8 feet away, and the guy behind
staggered.
that was, and they were staggered so that you couldn't just shoot through one and get through all
And
three
you
of them.
can't
So,
rush them. You can't rush them
and
if
you
they're
wouldn't,
stood like that.
well,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to do that. So
No.
if it had been, and this is me, not somebody else. Everybody needs to make their own decisions on this. If it had been me, I would have asked those simple questions. I would have said, the first thing I would have said though is, none of what you are saying is illegal. Nothing that I've done is illegal. I know that that's the case because I know what the law says. Therefore, I don't think that you have probable cause to get a warrant. Do you have a warrant? And at that point, I would say, well, I think our conversation is over. And if I had a hand, I would hand them my card, and then I would say, you can discuss this with my lawyer now. I am no longer going to speak. I'm not going to admit that I have these guns. I'm not going to deny that I have these guns, because anything I say can and will be used against me in a court of law.
Exactly.
And that's where the search and seizure part of the Fourth Amendment comes in. We also have this in our state constitution. I think it's section 9, but I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'd have to go look it up. That the police can't do some certain things, and if they do those things, then there is a problem with how those things are being dealt with.
Right, because I mean, if they were permitted to enter your home, then we're looking at anything is fair game.
Yes, and they will nail you for everything, because that is the way that they win cases.
Stack it up.
And yeah, they stack it up. So it starts leading into the Fifth Amendment here. What they'll try to do is they'll try to get, instead of just one charge, they want 30, because now they've overwhelmed you with the possibility of going to prison for a long time. Never mind that the judge is going to go, no, I don't like this one. Bye. There's a possibility that any of those charges could be thrown out at any given time, but they'll try to nail you with as many as possible, because that provides whoever's listening, the judge, the jury, with a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
And if you keep offending and keep stacking, what they'll do is they'll stick all of the charges into one case, and they'll get you with them all at the same time. We've actually seen that to some extent with the Portland situation. How can I explain this? I'm not going to call the Multnomah County District Attorney and say, hey, is this what you're doing? I think he's using the statute of limitations. I think he's set things up so that he can provide massive groups of charges against the people who continue to offend over and over again during the rioting that's been happening. I think he's using them for booster seats and step stools. I think he's just got these piles of paper all over the office. The longer he waits, the more pattern he has. And when they go to try to take that to court, the defense attorneys, which there aren't enough of, are already overwhelmed. They're going to go, wow, this is overwhelming, and we're going to have a hard time. We're going to have a hard time defending this. It may be better if you plead out.
Yeah.
Pleading out waives all of your rights, every last one of them. You've pled, you don't have your rights anymore. You've waived everything. You don't have a right to your jury trial. You don't have a right to your speedy trial. They can set you, you can plead guilty, and they can set you in jail for 10 months before they get around to sentencing you. And that's completely legal at that point, because you've waived your rights. The other side of this is that they don't have to worry about the evidence, because now they have a pattern. And that's where the slippery slope is.
Right.
So if this is you, the first thing you should do is don't talk to the cops, because that's what all the lawyers will tell you. Stop talking to the cops. Call a lawyer first. And the next thing you do is you stay home. You don't go protest anymore. You don't go buy any more guns. You don't do that. Any of that. You be quiet. You lay low, because they're going to look for everything. They
And
may,
that leads into like a question about privacy too, and like what's gonna be, going on with. Gregor had brought up some stuff in our last episode about privacy that we had talked about a little bit, but it kind of overlays a little bit here, and I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I'm going to refer to Mike Schmidt's campaign ad. Mike has a bold progressive vision for dramatically improving the fairness, effectiveness, and cost of our judicial system. He also has a proven record for working for an innovative approaches to reduce incarceration and address racial and economic disparities in criminal justice system. That's from his campaign webpage. And if you
what
look
is he
more into
running?
most,
What is he running for?
I think he's up for re-election.
Okay.
But I mean, that was, that's just the way he is working it. And one of the things that you find throughout his page, there's 3 things he does. It has to do with not prosecuting criminality. He talks about being for victims, yet and only pressing on violent crime people, but he is not doing either of those things. He has invariably released them without charges, the people that have been violent. So I'm going to argue with you that he is not doing this to collect a plethora of charges, because he's letting them go. He's not charging them. They're being released on their own recognizance. They're being released without bail. Which, we can talk about bail too, but that's the 6th Amendment and or the 8th Amendment as well.
Sure.
But I really think that Mike he has a platform for doing exactly what he is doing, which is letting all the bad guys go in order to control the population. And that keeps people scared and keeps them running to police and keeps them, he has a progressive agenda. And according to his own, he has a bold progressive vision to dramatically improve the, quote, fairness, effectiveness, and cost of our criminal justice system.
With zero transparency.
And the thing about that is that is something you will find among many district attorneys and attorney generals in states that are all funded by the same group, the Tides Foundation, George Soros, and the other kind of progressive thing. So our district attorney here in Washington County is a pretty fair guy. His office seems to be pretty solid. The police really enjoy the fact that he prosecutes people. The sheriff's department and the Hillsborough PD both have a lot of respect for him. And from what I've read, he's pretty good about being reasonable. He's not charging every single person, but he's also not releasing people that are dangerous. So, I don't have that much faith in Mike, that he is going to eventually charge all these people, because there has been no indication over the last 3 years that that's the case. Many of these people have released multiple times. Many of these people have, committed multiple crimes that included violence, and yet they're not charged and they're released.
See, and that's where other rights get to come into play. Probably my favorite right that is my favorite part of our Oregon Constitution is Article 1, Section 33, which says that our rights are not enumerated in this document. Yeah. So
that's
we
right out of
do
the
have the right to do things that aren't in our constitutions. And it doesn't matter if they've made a law about that. We do have a right to our property. We do have a right to our bodies. We do have a right to defend both of those things. And that's part of the problem, is that people have been told they don't have a right to do this, but they do. And
they don't know.
It's just that they don't know. And because they've been told this, it's an indoctrination process. It's taken a couple of decades to get to that point. And they've been doing it, because I've been hearing about it since I was in high school. You don't have the right to do that. I'm pretty sure we just covered that.
Actually, I do.
We just covered that we do have the right to do that. Oh, yeah.
It was just the class we were in. Yeah.
The first 10 amendments, the 9th Amendment's very clear, that if it's, and well, there is part of the debate. Jimmy and I were having a chat about this offline in preparation. We were talking about the idea of, is there a way to save this country in any way, shape, or form? Now, I know I'm an unpopular libertarian in the fact that I think that saving this country is important. I don't want to tear it down. I don't want to burn it down. I don't want to start over. I really do think that the concept, the founding principles of our constitutional republic is the best choice so far. Perfect? Of course not. There's no such thing as perfect. We're human. There's not going to be a perfect system ever. But a system based on the actual laws, not what the people think the laws say, but what the laws actually say, which was the purpose of the Constitution. The Constitution says, here is what the government can do. Well, the government doesn't have a right to regulate marriage. It doesn't have a right to regulate drug use. It doesn't have a right to do certain property things. It doesn't have a right. And it's not that I want, it's not that as a Christian, am I going to marry a gay man? Probably not. Besides, I've been married for 35 years. The warranty's expired on that girl. I got to keep her for the rest of my life. And I'm grateful that she's put up with me for that long, to be honest. But it's also none of my business what you do. Do I agree with you? No, but I don't have to agree with you. As long as you're doing two consenting adults and doing your thing, that's, I don't have to, will you go to heaven? Not in my book, but that's not relevant. That's important is that I treat you as a human being and respect you and have a right to do what you want. And the same goes for lots of things. But, the government way back when, starting, in the 1800s, especially when we started really amending the Constitution to do crazy things, like allow for income tax and took away the state's right to appoint their senators. These things reduced the ability for the state to function, and it increased the authority of the federal government.
And then adding all the 3-letter groups and everything like that.
And I'm all over restoring the original, restoring the Constitution, the 14th Amendment and beyond Constitution. Maybe look at some of the other, the other 20 or the other 12 amendments that have occurred since then, and decide which ones to keep. I'm not saying that women should not have the right to vote. Okay, I'm not saying that. That's a keeper. Fine, right? But I mean, reviewing what we have passed and looking at them like the act against, they had the 1918 law that or made alcohol illegal.
Prohibition.
Prohibition. Yeah, I couldn't find the word prohibition. Thank you. But prohibition went on for 13 years. And finally somebody figured out that it didn't work. More alcoholics, more murders, more crime, etc.
People going
and so what do? We prohibited laudanum and opium and other things instead, which, guess what? Look around. Do I want my children? Well, do I want my children to take those drugs? No, but also prohibiting them has done what?
The only thing the war on drugs has done is let the drugs win the war.
Yeah.
And
so
it's interesting
that
we should bring this up in discussion about 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment stuff. And do you know where our traffic laws came from?
I don't.
The first car, if you look it up, the first car was invented in 1908.
It was like 1898 or something. Yeah.
The Ford models came out in the early 1900s, and moonshiners didn't use their lights when they were traveling down the roads at breakneck speeds in the dark to hide from the cops. So they made laws saying that you had to have these working lights. And those working lights now include other working lights like turn signals, which weren't required either. And you couldn't, you had to have your brake lights and all of this other stuff. It wasn't about safety. That was about catching shiners running their boot right down the road and supplying their customers with moonshine during Prohibition. Why was it never taken off the books? Because they sold it in a different way, and they discovered they could be racist. They kept it. And that's why they've never brought it off the books.
Mhm.
So our traffic laws, the ones that dictate the terms of safety in cars, has nothing to do with safety in cars, because if it did, then and yes, seat belts are a good thing, but but you don't have to use force to sell a good idea.
I mean, there's states that don't have seatbelt laws and people still wear their seatbelts. Imagine that.
Yeah, go figure. So I think Idaho still does not have a helmet law.
Most southern
Um,
states don't have helmet laws either, because you'll break your brain using a
Well,
helmet.
Using a helmet is a good idea,
Mhm.
but the problem is that the helmet breaks your neck instead of bashing your brains out.
Your jaw, too.
It's not the same problem. It's a different problem, but they have to protect everyone. And that's where that concept of making sure that your rights to do what you want are still part of your choice.
Mhm.
Would I personally ride without a helmet? I have ridden without a helmet, and it was sketchy. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever handle babies, you blow in their face and they do that thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s and I still have that, and I can't actually ride without something in front of my face.
See, I can ride with
I-
the partial helmets and stuff, but riding without a helmet makes me a little nervous. Though I understand, like in climates in which you're over 120 degrees, black
yeah.
thing on your head is not necessarily good for your brain.
Yeah. And I actually ride a bike. I ride a
Mhm.
motorcycle. I happen to have two at the moment. If you invite me to one of your events, you're probably going to see me roll up on 2 wheels instead of 4.
Mhm.
And you don't worry, I'm still strapped. I'm strapped just as much as I would be in my truck, if not at least the same, if not more. But the goal is not what you think it is. It's not
Mhm.
about, I mean, there was a movie, I can't remember the name of the movie all of a sudden. Easy Rider? I can't
Mhm.
remember.
Mhm.
They basically went on choppers, just drove around and filmed that.
Yeah.
And people are sitting there going, "Oh, this is crazy." Well, stable at speed. They're not stable turning a corner at low speed.
Right.
Mhm.
It's better to be at full speed. Yeah.
And going
And
straight.
Yeah.
I have people tell me, "Oh, motorcycles are so dangerous." They're not.
No,
It's
they're not.
cages that are dangerous. Well, what about
Yes.
lane splitting? Lane splitting is perfectly fine if
Mhm.
people don't get pissed off that you're passing them because they can't go very far.
Yeah.
But if
Exactly.
everybody was doing this, and California has no laws
Yeah.
regarding this, and that's why they do it in
So Gregor's
California.
probably familiar with that.
Well, I
Utah
can even tell you why, but that's
Yeah.
beside.
Utah has just adopted lane splitting law. It's not in effect yet, but it's their UDOT is actually producing videos explaining how it works and why it works and how it's safer for people.
Mhm.
And they're showing pictures and videos of motorcycles that have been caught between 2 cars. There's nothing left of the motorcycle. When you get a stopped vehicle behind a stopped vehicle, and the guy behind you doesn't stop, you're gone. There's nothing left of you. You're pancaked.
Yeah.
Well,
Lane filtering does that, but
and
that's
go
not
ahead.
about our rights. But but understanding that and this is what's happening. We had a lane filtering bill come through our legislature and finally get passed, but Kate Brown vetoed it because of whatever special interest she was talking to at the time, saying it was dangerous.
Yeah.
But isn't your right to safety trump? Doesn't your right to safety trump whether or not the law is legal?
Well, see, I think there's part of that is the question, and it's true for the federal as well as the state government. Is the federal or state government responsible for your safety? And
They aren't.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that is part of the challenge is people look at, provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, and they think the general welfare means all my medicine, all my whatever, not realizing that it just means a safe environment to be able to search these things out.
Right.
And, there's a difference between creating a stable and safe society versus
the liberty to search those things out, not even
Yes.
safe
Yeah.
environment. It's not about
Right.
the safe environment. It's about being able to get what you need because you need that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now we can get back into the drug thing. If you made heroin legal today, most of the world would not be taking it. It would not,
It wouldn't
no,
change a lot of
it
people.
wouldn't really change anything.
Yeah.
What would change? What would change is what our law enforcement was spending their time on.
Mhm.
And that's why law enforcement is resisting it, is because now they can't justify their huge departments because they don't have a reason to pull people over and generate revenue to justify their huge departments. That's
But
where
the
the problem
departments are shrinking though. I mean, we don't necessarily, I mean, it would take weight off of some of the departments that have gotten smaller.
it would. And that's what's happened. I don't know if you've noticed this. Several counties in Oregon have, including mine, have issued statements saying they're no longer going to respond to every single call.
I heard that I think Multnomah did that too. I know in Seattle they did that before I moved down here. So
It
about
took-
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Have we done that in Washington County, Gregor? Do you know? No.
No, but just because the crime rate has increased for lots of reasons, and it's mostly spillover from Portland. I know that they will come if you call them, even for a traffic stop, or if you have a traffic accident, they will come if you call them, but it just may take some time.
Mm.
So we haven't got to the point where we're saying don't bother calling us unless, and the only reason I was in a traffic accident 2 years ago, somebody ran into the back of us, and the only reason I called the police is because the other person admitted that she did not have a license and she didn't have insurance.
Mm.
And it was like, I need a police report from my insurance company, and that was really the only reason I called them. They didn't end up ticketing her or arresting her or anything.
Mhm.
And I wasn't interested in pressing charges, and they ended up paying for all the fixing on my car. So I was happy, but it was just like they showed up in a relatively quick, the K9 unit pulled up and took our information and gave me the report number, and it was quick and easy and done. But, we've had so much crime, you look on nextdoor.com, which is a neighborhood app where people like to complain about their neighbors.
Mhm.
Right. That's why
Yeah.
I'm not on it.
Yeah, well, I kind of hate it, but other parts of me is like I do get decent information about what's going on in the neighborhood.
Oh,
And the
I
number
just
of-
don't want to read complaints about me. So
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so you're one of those neighbors.
Legit. I can understand.
You're one of those guys. But no, I mean, there's more and more reports since I've been here of people breaking into cars. There was a lady who had a ring cam of some poor guy who was severely obese driving around in his little electric wheel scooter, drove up to their house and stole their bag of cans off their porch and drove off. I mean, there's just little things that are all kinds of more crime is, and it's
Just little bits of chaos.
it's just, and it's, I would never consider pulling a bag of cans off my neighbor because I'm a moral person. And that is the difference, is a lot of these people don't have a societal view. They have a view of me. And therein lies the problem. One of the things, we've been talking about privacy and stuff and the right to do things, but one of the things I wanted to get to, and I mean, we've already been on for 40 minutes, so I guess we're not getting to the Fifth Amendment. One of the things I want to ask you about, in your description of yourself, you talked about referring it to the people. And being a recovering Californian, that sends up all kinds of red flags to me, because they took out, they have the process where you can vote on anything, literally. If you can get enough signatures, you can vote on it. And
we
I
have
have found
that too.
Yeah, okay. Well, I have found for the most part that generates chaos. And I'm not that I'm authoritarian. I'm really not. But I just believe I believe that my representatives should be doing what is good in the sight of the law, not good in the sight of their pocketbooks. And nobody does that, and I admit that freely. So yeah. But whenever somebody talks about having an actual democracy like that, it always brings me back to the French Revolution. Why do you think, is not Oregon doing the same thing California is doing, where people pass stuff that benefits them directly and really inhibits other people's rights?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know about the public display of news law?
I think I heard about this in passing recently, but Do tell.
It was 2021. Ginny Burdick got introduced this bill after she was hung in effigy at several protests. Had nothing to do with racism.
Nope.
But now that I mean, I live on the coast. I don't tie my shoes anyway because I want to kick them off and be able to walk in the sand or whatever. But I do sometimes have to wear boots. And when I wear boots, I do sometimes have to tie them. And now I don't leave my shoelaces flopping around in the breeze after I tie them because they made the definition of a noose to be some sort of loop. Never mind the fact that I'm one.
You have stalled out now on us.
Oh, that's too bad. I bet you it was a good rant too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Come on, satellite, get in range.
Are tied. They can.
Okay.
Oh, did I cut out?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
lost you at your loop of your shoe and you pulled your hand back and
Okay.
it froze.
Nope. So now it tells me. Let me back up then. So the loop on what they've done is they've made it ambiguous enough so that if I tie my shoes and they are unhappy with me, they can now label my tying of my shoes as a hate crime under the public display of a noose. Never mind that I actually know how to tie one of those. Where that came from, the history of the knot, the method of the knot. It's actually a heaving knot. If you're watching this, go look it up. Heaving knot, but a noose, a heaving knot has 7 or 8 turns on it. So you end
tie
up
your
with
shoes
this,
with that.
this little pickle thing about, well, if I'm doing it with it, the purpose of a heaving knot is you send a smaller line to pull a bigger line. So the smaller line is easy to throw than the bigger one. So they send a smaller line to do that. And nowadays they fire them out of cannons that are attached to M1s in the Navy. They do that. But so it makes this cylindrical knot, but a noose is an unfinished one that has 13 or 14 turns. So it turns to be about like that. And it's not a suffocation knot or a strangulation knot. It's a break your neck knot. That's why when you see they do on the gallows. Now the gallows is actually a nautical term. Gallows is this structure that's built to hold a boom. And so once you're using that, when they hung you from the gallows, they would drop something, kick something out so that your neck would, break. And that got applied to land. So all of that, but because one politician got offended, that people were offended by her actions, and we're not even talking offended by, we're not even talking people in the state, we're talking people in her own district were offended by her actions. And that's why I'm suggesting maybe they could add that. We've seen an overuse of the emergency clause.
Yes.
But if I were to say I'm gonna probably veto this because it doesn't refer to the voters, I want to ask all the people in Oregon whether or not they think it's okay.
Yeah.
And that way I know that you are actually representing the people. And that's what the role of the governor is. That's going to make them think. It's not really intended to stop legislation and require everything to go on the ballot, but it is required to make them think about maybe they're not doing what's right. So
Definitely.
thank you for calling me out on that and letting me explain why I would do that. It's not a move to do that. It's a move to say, I don't agree with this, and I don't think the people agree with this, so I think we should send this to the people, and then they can decide whether or not it's going to be adopted. Here's a prime example. If the people had been given an opportunity to vote on the corporate activity tax, they would have said no, and it wouldn't have happened. And they were supposed to, and that's the problem.
Well, and the double taxing on Oregon is as bad as California when it comes to taxation. I mean, they're double taxing your timber use, because they tax it once for land use and they tax it again for timber, and it's the taxation situation. People don't understand how much we're destroying the Oregon economy by all the taxation. And what does the government produce? Nothing
Mhm.
but
My
pain and
roads.
agony.
No, they don't.
No, they don't produce
No.
the roads. It's the companies they hire to produce the roads.
Oh, can I tell you my favorite road story? I know that you're probably, this is way off base.
Yeah, what do we have?
Okay, let's do it.
Something?
Yes.
Come on.
Wait, we're way out of there. My favorite road story. My parents lived across the street from a guy who I grew up in this house. The house, it was on a corner, and the street goes like that and it goes like that. My parents' house was on the side with two paved roads, and he lived across the street from them, so he had one unpaved road. It was gravel, and he was sitting there, he was complaining about how horrible it was that he had to sweep his house 3 times a day because the traffic on that road would throw up the dust and it would come into his house because it wasn't set back far enough. And that was before the house has been there, before they had the standards that they had in the city. So he's complaining about that, and he says, I'm thinking about that, and he went to the city and he said, well, how much is it going to take to pave this? Well, I want you to pave this. They said, find us $30,000. Now this is like 2005, right? Okay. So $30,000 would probably be about, I don't know, $90,000 today, something like that. Maybe more. $30,000 is what the city said. So he went through the rigmarole of trying to start a neighborhood improvement district, of trying to get something. He didn't have $30,000. He had some money, but not 30,000. He was short about 15,000 of that. And my dad at the time had been working with the guy who typically ended up getting all the contracts. And we decided one day that we were asking the wrong questions. So we said, hey, let's go talk to this guy. Like, we called him up. He said, if that's a better, do you have time to come out? We came out. And what had happened was he lived on the native, the Indian, his business was on the tribal lands. And so the rules out there are a little different as far as wiretapping is concerned. And he was not sure if he was straight up or not. He was a little bit concerned that he had something on his phone lines. So what he did is he asked us to come out. He took us out. We're wearing hard hats and we're standing out in the middle of the of the gravel pit talking about this, because there's all sorts of noise happening around it and there's no way that anybody's going to be able to listen. And he said this: if you pay this city $30,000, $6,000 to $8,000 is going to be used to actually build the road. 20,000 of it will be eaten by just, 18 to 20,000 will be eaten by just the bureaucracy.
Mhm.
And then the remainder is going to be permitting and a bunch of other regulatory stuff that doesn't actually need to happen if you're doing it on your own. And so I'm sitting there listening to this and I'm going, well, this is kind of interesting. Why does the government build roads? The government doesn't build roads. The government hires us to build roads. And we have
Highway
to,
robbery.
and they hire basically the lowest common denominator to do it, but they have the lowest common standards too, which is why the roads are always the crappy roads.
Mhm.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand. You're saying that the roads are not built correctly? That's correct. They're not built correctly. Let me give you an example. If you built them correctly, you would not have to do maintenance on them for the next 20 years.
Mhm.
Oh, really? How much would that cost? $10,000. Guy gets out, neighbor gets out his checkbook, just come do it. It took one day to do that entire block. It would have took 3 weeks if the government had done it, and cost $30,000. And we're just sitting there going, we watched it. I sat on the lawn the whole freaking day. They pulled up at like 15 minutes to 8 and started pulling equipment off trailers. And they basically had this loop-de-loop thing going on where the same truck was bringing equipment in and taking equipment away. as it was needed and whatnot. The distributor and dump trucks came in. The dump trucks came in. They scooped out all that old gravel and rebedded the whole thing. So they dug down like 1.5 feet to produce the correct bed that they needed to do. And it was amazing. It was amazing to watch. At the end of the day, he had this pristine asphalt down at the end of the block. And at the next meeting at the city council, he gifted it to the city so they could take care of it. And they refused to take it because it wasn't built to their specifications. Every single road around that one block has deteriorated, but they have yet to need to do any maintenance on the one block.
That's great.
It's been like 2005. So
Yeah, 15,
no,
17
the
years.
government
Yeah.
doesn't build roads. They build maintenance problems.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and that's how they keep people employed, and that's part of the game. Back to the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah,
Just
Fourth Amendment.
nice, graceful segue. So how do we?
I'm sorry, you can cut all that out. It's
Yeah, no, I'm not going to cut all that out. I'm not
No,
going to.
that's
I'm
fine.
leaving it. All right, no, we're leaving it. You don't know. You didn't say anything illegal, so we're not cutting anything out.
go get on my Twitter. I've explained how to privatize the roads and make it so we don't have to have them toll roads too.
No, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I figured it out.
There you go.
And we deal with our energy crisis and stuff like that too.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
there's so many
No,
subjects
I
like
tied it all
this I want to
together.
talk about in the future. Is just
Yes,
it's just
definitely.
fascinating. But let's get back to the right of privacy, and then I think
Yeah.
we'll call it good. Do we think one of the things that is interesting to me is we all have cell phones, and they don't work unless they're attached to towers and attached to geosynchronous satellite or geo satellites to help us navigate.
Mhm.
Got a question: at what point is your data not yours? Because I think that's a huge question we're going to have to come across. In my opinion, and the Fourth Amendment talks about being safe in your persons and your papers. And for me, any document you produce, you have, whether electronic or not, therefore, is covered under privacy. Now, you have to be responsible for where it goes. If you put it up on the internet, you've given up the right to privacy, right? Because you put it in a public space. It's like hanging it on a
Public
wall.
forum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even
But,
public space, but yeah, go on.
But I mean, if you put it out there in the world, it's going to be seen, and that's fine, and
Correct.
that's your prerogative. But I think you also have a right to keep from having it taken off your machine. Keyboard strokes. I know that there's rumors that the NSA, and I'm not saying they're not true. I'm just saying that they're rumors. It tracks keystrokes on people's things, so they have everybody's passwords, et cetera, like that. There's all kinds of things like that, which I think are illegal, in my humble opinion. But just based on the Fourth Amendment, at what point, how much privacy do you really have if you're using private networks? Like telephones, cell phones, they track you, right? They track you because they don't work if they don't track you.
And you're renting the space and the ability by using these phones, you're renting a lot of that information, the ability to send all this information.
Yeah. So at what point does
well.
your right to privacy kick in, and where you can say, no, you don't get to send that?
Yeah.
Well, that depends on if you read your terms of service or not.
Well, nobody reads
yeah.
the terms of service, but
That's correct.
if
but
you
that-
were,
but it's actually in their terms of service for pretty much everything that you've done, what they can do with your data,
right?
because you're signing a contract.
And I'm not
in the
arguing with you. I
process.
agree with you 1,000% because I actually read my terms of service, and it's shocking what they say that they're allowed to take from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now the question, if I'm going to do anything, guess what? My phone's not going to come with me, so that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But the fact
phone,
that
I know what I'm talking about.
yes, my lord.
And it's good. It's good that this came up. I have actually been using my phone GPS system as an alibi for my presence since 2003. My first divorce did not go well.
Sorry.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
I at that point in time, my first wife had made lots of claims about where I was and what I was doing, and I started carrying my phone religiously with the GPS always active. And to this day, I turn that on immediately. My GPS is always active. The reason is because if I need to prove that I was somewhere else, that's going to be available to me, and it will identify what time that was. And I hate to say that, but I've actually had to use that, prove that I was somewhere else because of allegations of other people.
I mean, that's the way it definitely can work for you.
Yeah, and so you make it work for you, but at the same time, yes, you're right. You need to take it out of your pocket and leave it if you're going to go do something dumb.
I would never do
Something
anything
illicit.
I would never do anything illicit.
If you can't read a map, it's not going to matter because the feds can read a map. So you should know how to read a map. And I'm just going to say, if you're going to do something dumb, you just leave your phone sitting on the desk. I don't know, put it in a hamster wheel or something, make it look like it was moving, but whatever. I'm not condoning doing illegal things here.
Yeah, it's like when you're having a conversation and it's taken, somebody say the feds assume it's about something that they need to track.
I won't even take my truck to go do stuff like that, because my truck has computers in it that can identify where I've been. If I were going to do that, I would be 100% off the grid, and I would walk, because no one will see me if I'm walking through the woods, where they will see me if I'm driving down the road. They will be able to prove that I was there. They will be able to do it. It's so much easier to do what they're going to do. So, no, your privacy is gone if they subpoena your records. You don't have any privacy, and they don't have to have a warrant to subpoena your records. They can just do that. If they do have a warrant, it's compelled, but the subpoena is usually part of getting the warrant, if that makes any sense. So,
police actually subscribe to services that can track your phone, as a matter of public records. They don't even need subpoenas. I don't know if that's shocking or not, but I mean, a friend of mine is a peace officer for the California Highway Patrol, and he was telling me they were talking about getting warrants. He says, well, we subscribe to this service. Why don't we just look it up?
Yeah.
There's
all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So, you have to understand your privacy ends literally where you're physically located. And I mean by the tips of your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're completely right. Yes, your privacy is yours, but we've gotten to a point where it's default that you don't have any, because you don't read the terms of service and you enter into a lot of contracts.
A lot of people, they just assume it's the small print, it's the fine print, it's just, talking about all the things that get rattled off at the end of advertisements. They don't realize that it actually has information in that's kind of important for you to be aware of, and that it is a legal binding contract.
Well, I spent 15 years as a tech support geek, and one of the biggest things we always had was malware installed on machines. And people said, well, how did it get on there? And I said, well, you click to install it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, what? I said, yeah, you remember that thing you said that do not do this, and you hit do not do this? Yeah, well, if you read what it said, it says do not install.
Right.
Or, it would say things similar to that in order to get you to trick you into installing the software.
And stopping you to go, wait, that's a double negative. They're going to install it.
And invariably, if you read if you read some of the malware, if you read some of the stuff when it pops up, it's written such a way that no seems like the right answer, where that is actually the wrong answer. And it's not technically illegal, and it's not, and people, well, that sounds terrible. It's like, yeah, well, forgive me, but you have to be responsible for your actions.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And there's other wonderful situations that you can get yourself into with all that too. Sometimes it's an automatic admission of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a prime example. Facebook actually defines in the terms of service where you can file a grievance against them. which court you can file in.
Yeah, you have to
And
do it in California. You have to do
You
it
have to do it. You have to do it in a specific court in
district
California.
in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's where their lawyers are,
Mhm.
Right.
and they don't want to have to go find other lawyers. So you have to go find other lawyers
You
instead.
have to go to them, yeah.
So, yeah, the terms of service, you just you need to accept that you no longer have privacy. There was a Will Smith movie. I can't remember.
There's a lot of them.
Will Smith and Jane Hackman were in it, and it was basically Will Smith running from the cops with Gene Hackman in tow for a long time. They were saying that this is in the 90s too. This
Enemy of
wasn't
the
even
state.
a current movement. Enemy of the state, yeah. He was saying your face is on security cameras
Yeah,
all the time.
everywhere.
Why would you don't go anywhere? If you're running, you go and disappear and you stay disappeared.
Mhm.
You don't go you don't use an
Just
ATM.
go to the
because
ATM, it's your
there's a
face is
camera on
there.
the ATM. Your
Yeah.
face is there.
There are traffic cams that flash as people plow through lights. Those too can still catch you.
So
We're losing you again.
our lives have been subverted, I guess. Subverted, maybe that's the question, the word that I would use, because we no longer really have the opportunity to have privacy anymore.
Mhm.
And anything we do can be used against us in a court of law. So cancel culture is a good one too. If you put something on Twitter, that doesn't go away. They actually
No.
have they have an entire database of Trump tweets.
Yeah.
Trump has been deleted, and they've kept this database of Trump tweets going,
Mhm.
which basically just logged every single thing and copied the database that Twitter had. So
Well, Google the Wayback Machine sometime. I mean, you can
Yeah.
actually look up almost anything that happened yesterday or an hour ago, even if they
Right.
deleted it. And that's public. That's a matter of public record. It's not something.
and at that point it is public record at that point.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, the
and
Wayback Machine is anybody can access it for free. You don't, if you know the URL, you can plug the URL in, from that date and look at look back at various dates and see what that URL said at that date.
Mhm.
right.
Or you can, even if a web page is deleted or a tweet's deleted, it's all out there. What you put out there is out there forever.
Yeah, GoDaddy
Indeed.
deleted my campaign website. I don't know if it was accidental or what, but they deleted it. I restored the website by using the Wayback Machine.
Yep.
I was able to get them almost everything, and the stuff I wasn't able to get a hold of, I had written in Google Docs. Just went through the history of the Google Doc, so I still managed to get it all.
Yeah, it doesn't go away with the internet.
Yeah.
You are immortalized whether you want to be or not.
So, but how does that apply to the fifth? Because now that you've been immortalized, they can use that against you in court.
And they can use it against you for just about anything. If you want to, do politics, if you want to be a teacher, if you want a job as, flipping burgers, if they want to find something, anything, you're immortalized. If you put it out there, anybody can find it.
So the Fifth Amendment is that no person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, which I think it really meant military, but whatever. When an actual service in times of war, public danger.
And I'm going to suggest we hold off on that discussion because we've already been here
That's a
for
big
over an
one.
hour.
Yeah.
And we might want to just start next week or in 2 weeks with that again, because I think
we're getting into double jeopardy. And
and that's actually a heavy discussion.
It is,
people don't realize that double jeopardy doesn't mean what it used to mean.
No, and I think that would be a great thing to have for our next episode, and a good one to really focus on at that point.
So
I'm sorry.
Did you have a closing? That's okay. Did you have a closing plan, Jimmy? Or
I mean, just recapping, we just basically talked about how the ATF and their recent search and seizures. Let's see, what else did we go over today? More of privacy and the Fourth Amendment.
We didn't talk
And-
about what happened with that guy in Michigan or Wisconsin, whether it's CRS Firearms YouTube channel.
Delaware.
Yeah. Do we know what happened with him? Did that
He
happen
apparently
It was the auto key card. It was a thing with a little card, business wallet size thing, credit card size thing. It was a picture of a lightning link that was etched into the card, so you couldn't just erase it. And he was helping the guy, and the guy was in Florida, I think. He was helping the guy sell them, and he had one, and he showed it on his YouTube channel. And now he's facing charges for manufacturing or owning an illegal automatic firearm, because they call lightning link an automatic firearm. Never mind the fact that it's First Amendment we're talking about. This is also the case that's directly challenging the existence of the NFA. Now that Serpa v. Bruin has come down, they went ahead and added that in there. They decided to challenge the existence of all gun laws because the NFA started it all. So,
right.
That'll definitely be
That's
interesting.
the
to see how that
National
unfolds.
Firearms Act from 1963, right?
Mhm.
no, the National Firearms Act of 1934.
Oh, that's right. When they
Mhm.
restricted machine guns because of Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that was part of it.
Machine.
Yeah.
They added that in 1984. They restricted by making you buy a tax stamp, but it was legal to still produce them for civilian use. In 1984, they stopped allowing them to be made for civilian use.
Right.
In 68, expanded some things and stuff like that. It's been ongoing, but the NFA in 1934 is where it started. And it started because the Klansmen were very unhappy about being shot at by the freedmen while they were burning crosses on their property. So they got the NRA to back a bill that would theoretically restrict that capacity and protect the Klan.
Which is funny considering the NRA's purpose was to teach freed slaves how to shoot.
Well, when the majority speaks in an organization like that, majority wins. So
And we'll definitely want to. I think.
Don't get me started on the NRA.
So. We'll definitely want to do that one for another episode too.
Why would we want to talk about negotiating our rights away?
Right, exactly.
All
right.
Well, I definitely think this has been a lot of fun and very interesting. We have a lot more to delve into, and I'm thinking that Leon might want to join us hopefully in the next episode or two.
I'd be happy to. And if you have more people, we can do that too.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
I'm sorry I talk so much.
I don't apologize.
No, I'm not.
The whole point is to share here, so don't apologize for sharing.
I'm only a little sorry.
Okay. I'm glad you're not a lot sorry. A little sorry is fine.
More curious minds, the better, and the more thoughts, the better. So definitely you can find our information in the show notes and reach out to us if you have questions, inquiries. It's all groovy. But regardless, until the next episode, question everything, seek truth, and stay curious. Thank you, guys.